Hello, my name is Piro Recimortola. I will be presenting Assignment 7, the crashed project for the Texas Wildlife Research Vessel for Group 4 NextGen engineers. For this presentation, we will go over the executive summary, uh, the refinements on our budget, where we include additional fees related to hiring and firing. Then we'll look at our crashed network where we attempt to finish the project 1 month in advance by crashing certain activities on the critical path. And then we'll look at the budget when we crash the network and the associated fees with crashing the task. We'll first look at an updated budget, which includes the hiring and firing costs, which include advertising, training, and severance and administrative costs. And then we'll look at the crashed network, where we try to crash certain activities on the critical path to save as much time as we can, and the costs associated with crashing these tasks to make up for uh, the shortened time, as well as the mythical man month, which isn't just a matter of hiring extra workers. There's also the consideration of overtime pay, fees for expediting processes such as shipping, um, or any technological limitations, or we might need to rent or buy extra equipment to meet these more restricted timelines. As mentioned, we will be adding the hiring and firing costs listed here associated with hiring extra workers. On the table on the right, we have a rough estimate on what these costs will be, as well as the regular pay and overtime pay that we might expect to pay for skilled and unskilled workers. We also have the team size that we expect to hire for across all subsystems of the vessel. As the project goes on, we will hire a total of 9 skilled and a total of 12 unskilled workers. Here we have the updated budget. In green, we have the additional costs, where we spent the additional costs for firing and hiring the workers. And at the bottom, we have the updated total monthly budget. This is roughly $100,000 more than the previous budget, which is just from the hiring and firing costs for our normal uh, amount of workers that we expect to need to hire. For this assignment, we were tasked with crashing our projects so as to finish 1 month ahead of our original timeline. We did this by looking at the critical path on our project network and seeing where we can save time through the slack for each activity. We also needed to consider the costs of crashing each task, any necessary overtime, additional workers, their hiring, firing costs, any additional equipment that might be necessary, um, or fees for expediting certain processes. We also needed to make sure to make reasonable assumptions, such as hiring uh, only so many extra workers, since there's only a limited amount of space for everyone to work in. Um, by the end, we were able to save roughly 21 days uh, in our timeline after crashing the uh, network. Here we have the crashed network, sort of zoomed in on the critical path. so you can clearly see where the days saved come from, which are above the tasks here. So you can see there's some days saved from the navigation and electrical system, uh, which aren't directly on the critical path as above, uh, but they are predecessors to, for example, the installing the research equipment and the system testing. So they also needed to be crashed to make the overall critical path shorter. After crashing the network, we now have to look at the associated costs of crashing it. Most of these costs come from additional workers that need to be hired and eventually fired, as well as the any necessary overtime uh, that may be needed to meet this more stringent timeline, as well as additional equipment, um, which is particularly poignant in our whole process, where, for example, for cutting the aluminum, we'll need additional CNC equipment to cut out the parts. Um, as mentioned earlier, most of the time saved and thus most of the costs come from crashing the whole construction as well as the subsystem testing. Here we have a table showing how much extra it is to crash certain activities. Um, Most of these extra costs come from additional uh, workers being hired as well as overtime. Um, as we can see, there's many activities that can be crashed. However, they're not all on the critical path. The rows in highlighted in red are the ones that uh, count towards the total cost of crashing, as they are the activities on the critical path. And here we have the updated crashed budget. You can see how each sort of category of costs plays out, as well as the effect of crashing, or how much crashing eventually comes out to. In conclusion, we can see that crashing the project is a trade-off between time and cost. We also see that the costs associated with crashing tasks is not uh, simply from adding additional workers, um, since this sort of goes against the mythical sort of man-month effect, where uh, simply adding workers to a project is not going to speed up the project necessarily. There's restrictions that need to be considered, additional equipment costs, um, additional fees, processing fees, and such that play into how much crashing an activity ends up costing. Here on the right, we have a summary of the uncrashed budget versus the crashed budget, and we see that there's a rough $37,000 to crash the budget to finish 21 days in advance. Um, and at the end of the day, we need to consider whether this cost is worth uh, that amount of time that we save. Thank you.